It was November 9th, 2023. Saltanat's lifeless body would be found in a restaurant owned by none other than her husband, Kuandyk Bishimbaev, the ex-economy minister. The headlines exploded, and the country was left reeling. But how did it all come to this? Kuandyk Bishimbaev was ex-finance minister of Kazakhstan who came from a very powerful family, but his past was quite shady. So he's been charged with corruption but was pardoned by the president of Kazakhstan. He's been married twice before, and his first wife has committed suicide. He had three children with his second wife, and people who knew him and who worked for him described him as a tyrant, as a very aggressive and just overall terrible person. Saltanat, on the other hand, used to do astrology readings for a living. She had a very successful Instagram blog with many, many followers. And in her city of Astana, she was a famous astrologer. And her clients had nothing but good things to say about her. So, how did these two people meet, and what happened after their marriage? According to Kuandyk Bishimbaev, he found out about Saltanat Nukenova from one of his female friends who told him that there is this amazing astrologer in Astana. She makes the most accurate predictions, and she suggested that he would maybe get an appointment with her. So then Bishimbaev would check her on Instagram, and he noticed that Saltanat was very beautiful. However, he also saw that she had a boyfriend, and he just moved on, I guess. He said that every now and then he would, check her page, and he noticed that she and her boyfriend got engaged. So he forgot about her for a moment until later on, around August, his female friend told him that Saltanat and her fiance broke up. There's no longer gonna be a wedding. So then Kuandyk all of a sudden thinks this is a great opportunity to pursue her. He then does a very creepy thing, in my opinion. He calls one of his other female friends and instructs her to get an appointment with Saltanat for a reading. So she does, and he tells his female friend to kind of tell Saltanat that she has this friend who is interested in her. Would she like to maybe go on a date with him? And his friend does just that. And apparently, his friend and Saltanat really hit it off during their reading, so much so that his friend ends up calling Kuandyk on a video call while with Saltanat, and they talk briefly. And Kuandyk kind of asks her hey, maybe I can get an appointment with you. And Saltanat is like, okay, cool. But once he really wants to schedule a reading with Saltanat, she becomes kind of avoidant. She keeps telling him hey, I'm kind of busy, maybe not now. But Kuandyk is really interested in her, so he ends up messaging her saying that, look, I am not interested in astrology or readings. I just want to go on a date with you. How about we, just go out and we talk and we see if we like each other, and whatever happens after that, I'm okay with it. And actually, Saltanat would just ignore his message. She would only reply him 3 days later, and she would agree to go on a date with him. On their first day, Bishimbaev said that he noticed that Saltanat was still quite sad and heartbroken over her breakup, but despite that, they spent 5 hours talking and getting to know each other, and overall, he felt like they were having a good time. So after the date, his driver took them to Saltanat's place to drop her off, and that's when he says that she kissed him. So he thought okay, she's into me. So after that, he would call her on dates, but she would be kind of avoidant. According to him, they would go on dates, and then Saltanat would just become ice cold, tell him that she's not ready to date yet because she just had this breakup and she is, still needs some time to heal. But then she would call him up again, and then they would meet again, and then she would again go back to being avoidant. So according to him, that was kind of a pattern in their relationship until fall 2022, when he offered her to go, travel with him for 20 days. And he said that this would be a great opportunity for them to get to know each other. He told her that he was 41 or 42, so he wasn't looking for a girlfriend, he was looking for a wife. So he really wanted to see, like, did they have chemistry? Could their relationship maybe have a future? So Saltanat agrees, and he said that they had a lot of fun during those 20 days. They would travel everywhere, they would meet some of Saltanat's friends, so it all was going good. And he just decides to propose to her. And at least for me, this relationship is progressing like extremely quickly. Saltanat only had her breakup like in August 2022, but by fall 2022 she's already getting proposed by this guy. Anyway, he says that, they met each other's families. Saltanat moved in with him, and during, it was December 2022, I believe, they had their wedding, and their wedding was quite intimate according to him. So they get married and they start their new married life, and all was going good according to him until Saltanat began having mood swings. Out of nowhere, she would just lash out on him about tiniest of things. Like during his testimony, he said that Saltanat was very forgetful, and one time she had a hard time finding her car keys, and he just told her to, maybe find a one place where she would put them all the time so that she wouldn't have to waste her time looking for her car keys. And to that, according to him, she just lost her mind. She began cussing him out. She began telling him, "How dare you to tell me how to live? You shouldn't tell me things like that. I already got married. I can do whatever I want." And these are his words. And he said that, oh my god, he was like, what is going on? This isn't the woman that I knew. She just became like this completely different person. So according to him, he would, talk to her and be like, "Hey, what is going on? Why are you like behaving this way?" Because he felt like there was some underlying problem there. So that's when, according to him, Saltanat comes. Kuandyk says that in his office he had these photos of him with various presidents of different countries, with very powerful and rich businessmen, and etc. So according to him, Saltanat told him that there was a photo of him with this very prominent businessman, and she came clean that before, she began her relationships with him, she used to be this man's mistress. And, every day entering into his office and seeing that picture, it was really eating at her. So that's why she was behaving this way. And Kuandyk says when he found out about it that he was extremely shocked. This man, he says, is maybe 20 years older than her. He has like 4 kids and a wife. And it was just so like crazy for him that his wife used to be a mistress of this person. And he even says that Saltanat told him that her previous engagement failed because her fiance found out about her pasts. So that's why now she was, hiding it from Kuandyk, but she didn't know that Kuandyk personally knew this person. Kuandyk says that, it made him really mad because he told her multiple times that before they get married, they should tell each other everything and they should have no secrets. But here he finds out something that is so crazy, and he said and these are his words, that he felt so ashamed of his wife. He felt like all these powerful and rich friends of his could just come and tell to his face like, oh, your wife, she's been with this guy and that guy, and that just infuriated him. However, he insists that he just forgave her. He was like, you know what? It's okay. I'm 41. I no longer care what people have to say about me. So what? They will come and make some comments. I will just ignore it because I love you. But he says that from that moment, Sultanat began having like the craziest mood swings. She would just tell him that now that he knew the truth, their relationship would never be the same. So, ever since then, she became extremely possessive and jealous of him. He said that whenever he would go out with his friends or he had, business meetings, Sultanat would just start calling him on video calls. And if he didn't, answer her video calls and he didn't show her, the people he was with, that she would just lose her mind. He would come home and they'd have these extreme fights. One time he said that he was in a business meeting. She called him on a video call. He rejected, but he texted her saying that, hey, I cannot talk now. Can we talk later? To which he says that Sultanat just cussed them out. And when he came home, she was gone. She literally packed her stuff and she went to a hotel where she was binge drinking, and then she just came back like nothing happened. According to Kuandyk, that was her pattern. Her brother said during his testimony that according to his knowledge, Sultanat tried leaving Kuandyk like 8 times, but Kuandyk said like, oh, nay, actually she left me 12 times. And mind you, they were only married for a year. So according to Kuandyk, his wife would leave him literally like once a month, sometimes twice a month. And he said that he never hurt her in any way. Throughout his testimony, he kept bringing up the fact that he, used to buy her expensive gifts and jewelry. He gave her an allowance so that she didn't have to work anymore. He said that they had a personal driver, they had maids. Sultanat never had to cook or clean or do anything around the house. According to him, she was living the life. She had, a huge allowance. She had staff around the house. So she basically did nothing according to him. Now, whether or not this is true, we don't know. Unfortunately, Saltanat is no longer here to tell her side of the story because her husband killed her. But he claims that she was living her best life, but she was just unstable and she would always get jealous, and she had an alcohol addiction. He even tried to say that Saltanat told him that her father had some mental health issues that she inherited, and that's why she was behaving this way. However, her father got a doctor's notice that he didn't have any mental health issues. So throughout his testimony, it really felt like he just tried to smear Saltanat's name and assassinate her character. He said that she was extremely jealous, possessive, she had mental health issues, she had alcohol addiction, and that overall, she just wasn't a good woman, according to him. He kept trying to bring up her past relationship and the fact that, according to him, she had some inappropriate relationships with some married men before him. But again, none of this can be confirmed. Those are his words and his words only. Saltanat is no longer here to confirm or deny any of that. So according to Kuandyk, at some point he was getting really tired of Saltanat's behavior, of the fact that she was, constantly leaving him and then coming back. So actually, he says that he was the one who tried to end the relationship. He kept trying to tell Saltanat, hey, this isn't gonna work. But he also says that he really loved Saltanat and he did everything he could to save their marriage. He even found them this Russian therapist who lived in Bali, and he paid this therapist like $15,000. He would fly this therapist to Astana from Bali so that, they could have a talk with his wife and figure out what is going on with her. But according to Kuandyk, none of these things worked. Saltanat, she was just unhinged and there was no saving her. At some point, he says that he even tried to give her some medicine to control her mood swings. And he named the medicine, I can't quite remember now the name, but it seems like you can't really buy this medicine without doctor's prescription, but somehow Kuandyk was able to buy it without the prescription and he was giving it to Saltanat. And he said that, whenever she was on meds, she would, calm down, she would stop having mood swings, and whenever she stopped taking them, she would have these mood swings again. Anyway, he says that in their marriage, he only hurt her maybe once. They had a fight and he slapped her twice, and it happened around March 2023, I think. And this fight is quite significant in their marriage because Saltanat ends up sending a picture of her face with bruises to her brother, and she tells her brother that, hey, I want you to keep this picture. Don't ask me any questions. Don't tell me what to do. Just keep this picture. She said that Kuandyk would oftentimes go through her phone, so she couldn't have this on her phone, but she just needed somebody from her family to have this picture just in case. Sultanat's brother sees this picture and her face, it's just bruised. He gets really angry and he starts calling Sultanat. She doesn't pick up the phone. He gets worried sick, so he calls her husband Kuandyk and he is like, what the hell is going on? Why is my sister sending me picture like this? To which Kuandyk apparently says like, hey, come to my place and we will talk. Her brother does just that. He goes to their place and he says that when he arrived at their apartment, Kuandyk wasn't there, Saltanat wasn't there. Only Kuandyk's two children were there, and he asked them, where is my sister? To which they replied, we don't know. He then ends up calling Kuandyk's mother, and Kuandyk's mother said that Saltanat could be staying at her apartment, and her apartment was just like one floor down Kuandyk's apartment. Anyway, that's when he meets Kuandyk and they end up having a physical fight. He then goes down, starts knocking on a door, nobody answers, and I think he ends up breaking the door handle. And he sees his sister, and he said that her bruises had already like kind of healed. So it seemed like that picture was taken like a while back, it wasn't recent. He tells his sister to pack her stuff and that they were gonna leave. He says, hey, there's no way I'm gonna let you stay with this guy. To which his sister unfortunately refuses to leave with him. She says that, hey, this is, her life, her marriage, and he should just butt out. He gets very angry, and the two of them end up unfortunately getting in a fight. Apparently, when her brother and Kuandyk were having their physical fight in an apartment, Kuandyk's two children got really scared. They told about the incident to their mother. They said that, Sultanat's brother had a knife and he tried to kill their daddy. They were very scared. And Kuandyk's ex-wife, she was just furious. Like, her kids understandably were very scared and traumatized, and she even called the police, and she was gonna make sure that the kids were never allowed to be in Sultanat's presence or in the presence of her family. And that's when the relationship of Sultanat and her brother gets even worse. She asks him like, hey, did you hurt the kids? Did you do anything to the kids? And her brother says, like, of course not. I wasn't there for the kids. I was there to talk to your husband. And she tells her brother that, now she's very heartbroken that she no longer will be able to see the kids. She actually really loved his kids. She used to get along great with his 10-year-old daughter, and she was mad at her brother for causing a scene. And she told him now that Kuandyk and his ex-wife were gonna have a lot of problems. And her brother was again trying to convince her to leave her husband. He said that, hey, at some point he might kill you. But unfortunately, she refuses, and this is quite sad. But she and Kwandak would move on with their lives, and again, they would have their fights. She would leave, she would come back, and that's what their life looked like until November 9th. So prior to November 9th, um, Saltanat had tried to leave Kuandyk for good. She went back to her hometown. She was staying with her parents. Her parents were extremely supportive of her, and they did try to convince her to leave him. They said, hey, there is no shame in divorce. If this relationship isn't working for you, you shouldn't stay. And she looked quite receptive, and it looked like, this was going to be the end. Unfortunately, she would go back to Astana, where she would get back with her husband. And her family only found out about it from her Instagram. She posted pictures of her and Kuandyk. They were in Istanbul. So then they would come back to Astana, try to get back to their normal lives. And he said that November 8th was just a normal day for them. He was in his office that morning drinking coffee and getting work done. And Saltanat told him that her friend, she got these tickets to this concert that she really wanted to go to, and she asked Kuandyk if he wanted to join them. He said no, but she insisted, so eventually he agreed. Then he says that that morning Saltanat was trying on different outfits to wear to the concert, but most of her stuff was still in her hometown, so she had very few clothes in Kuandyk's apartment. Then Kuandyk says that he wanted to make her happy, so he offered, let's go shopping and we can buy you a nice outfit for the concert, and we're gonna have ourselves a good old time. So the two of them end up going shopping. They buy Saltanat some suits from Max Mara, and he said that those suits looked always good on her, so he would buy her several suits in different colors. Again, he says that they always look good on her, and this detail is going to be very important later on. So keep in mind, in Max Mara, they bought a lot of clothes for Saltanat. Then he said that he dropped Saltanat off at his restaurant that he owned, and there Saltanat was supposed to meet her friend with whom they were gonna go to the concert. And in the meantime, while they would chat in the restaurant with her friend, Kuandyk said that he was gonna go to the gym. He was gonna work out and then join them directly at the concert venue. And also, another key detail to keep in mind is that the venue where the concert was actually very close to the place where Kuandyk's restaurant was located. So another thing to keep in mind. Kuandyk says that he went to the gym, he came back, and he saw Saltanat with her friend at the concert venue. He asked them if they wanted to drink champagne, to which they said yes, sure, why not. So then he calls up some people who work in his restaurant, and he tells them to bring champagne to the venue. And according to him, he stood outside for like 40 minutes and he was waiting for champagne. And eventually he got the champagne, and he was very angry because it took so long for the champagne to arrive. So he was already in a bad mood. He enters the venue, gives the champagne to his wife and her friend, and he notices that his wife was already like pouting. She was upset, and he asks her what's wrong, and she, according to him, was mad that not only he came to the concert late, but he also spent 40 minutes waiting for the champagne to arrive. So she was upset because of that. So they began kind of fighting during the concert, and eventually Saltanat would like get up and leave. He follows her, and again, he says that he followed her outside. Saltanat was very angry and she was drunk, according to him. He said that she began cussing him out. She began accusing him of all things that he never done. So he was just there, apparently listening to her cussing him out and just waiting for her to calm down. But she didn't calm down, according to him. They got in a car outside the concert venue, and he told during his testimony that Saltanat was drunk, she was angry, and she told him that he resented her because he was giving her so much money and buying her expensive gifts. So then she began like removing her like rings and necklaces and all the jewelry she had on her, and she threw it on his face, to which he said he got really hurt, so he slapped her. Then Sultanat got even angrier, and she took all the new clothes that he bought her and threw it outside the car. And she again goes to cussing him, trying to hit him, and he is just trying to, de-escalate the situation. Eventually, she calms down, and he tells her like, "Okay, go out and pick up all the stuff that you threw from the car." She does just that. Only there was a piece of jewelry that she ended up throwing out really far, and it landed next to a hotel. So he tells his wife to wait for him in the car, and he was gonna go find the jewelry. He finds the jewelry, then they drive to his restaurant. They arrive to the restaurant, and he orders 2 bottles of champagne. They drink champagne, and he said that Saltanat was just so angry at him. She wouldn't stop talking, she wouldn't stop telling him how hurt she was. Apparently, while Saltanat was staying with her parents in her hometown, Kuandyk had cheated on her, and Saltanat found out about it. She was very hurt, she was very upset. So he said that they arrived at the restaurant at maybe 8 or 9, and until midnight, she just would like talk nonstop about how hurt she was. And he thought, like, okay, let me just let her finish talking. She will get it out of her system and we'll just go home. But that doesn't happen, and here's where the story gets kind of weird for me, and it's kind of unclear from his testimony too. There is a footage of them leaving the restaurant, then coming back again, then leaving, then coming back again, then leaving, and then coming back again. And it's kind of like hard to understand what was going on. Were they trying to go home, or did they need to get fresh air? It's unclear. Anyway, they end up back in the VIP room number 1, where, according to him, Saltanat was now very drunk, and she began shouting at him and screaming. And at that time, there were some staff members in the restaurant who were painting the walls or something. They were doing some work around the restaurant, and this is very late into the night. So he tells his wife, like, hey, get it together. If you want to shout, let's go to the restroom. According to him, the restrooms in his restaurant, they were like soundproof, so they could just go there, and she could like scream all she wanted and nobody would hear them. So they go to the restroom, and she just sits on the floor of the restroom, and the restroom is like quite small. The bathroom is quite small, but she sits there and she shouts at him. Then she begins once again removing all of her jewelry, and she tossed them in the toilet and she tried to flush them. And according to Kuandyk, this again made him very upset because all of this jewelry he bought her and it was very meaningful to him apparently. So he slaps her in the face in the bathroom, and he says that she was being unhinged. She was so angry that she began getting naked, and she like removed her new clothes that she bought from Max Mara, and she was like, "Here you go, I need your clothes." Then they got in a physical altercation where she like tore his shirt. So these are his words, and a lot of these things don't add up. Anyway, he says that she got up and she said that she was gonna remove her pants, and he like grabbed her from behind and he was like holding her. She is trying to remove her pants in this moment. Then he says that he removed his hand from behind her, and that's when she lost balance and she fell and hit her face on the toilet. He said that she appeared to hit her face really hard, and after that she tried to get up and she fell again, tried to get up and fell again, tried to get up and fell again. And all this time, as his wife, a woman he claims to love so much, as she hits her head on the toilet, she falls continuously on the floor, he just stands there watching her for whatever reason. Then he said eventually he tried to help her as she was laying on the floor. He tries to lift her up, but he says that she was quite heavy and it was very hard for him to lift her up. So he dropped her a couple of times just trying to lift her up. Oh my god. Eventually he says that he was getting, so tired of this situation. He just goes out and he, smokes a cigarette outside, and as he comes back, he said that she locked the bathroom door and he no longer could enter. According to him, in his own words, and this part is so traumatizing and scary. He says that she was cussing him out, she was being unhinged, she was just calling him all the worst words you could call somebody. He gets really angry, so he punches and kicks the door like 22 times trying to open it. And the reason why I said this is very scary, and this is gonna make me want to cry, but it sounds like they had altercation in the bathroom, and a lot of people suspect that that's when he was beating her up, and they suspect that he actually hit her head against the toilet. So as he left to, smoke a cigarette, they suspect that Saltanat actually locked the door to protect herself because she was so scared and she was just trying to save her life. And he ends up breaking the bathroom door, and he said that she was, just sitting on the floor and she looked fine to him. They tried to leave the restaurant at some point, and as they get in the car, he said that he now realizes that he is way too drunk to drive his car home, and they go back inside. They then, according to his testimony, try to leave once again, and this time Saltanat was completely naked and he gave her like his winter jacket. He didn't have his shirt on, so he only had like a jacket on, but you could see like his skin, naked skin. And he says that he tried to call a driver, but then he saw that the security guard outside the in the parking lot was giving him like dirty looks, and according to him he was just so mortified that if they ordered an Uber, The driver would see them in this terrible state. His wife is naked. She had bruises on her face. He had bruises on him. He was like half naked or whatever. So this whole thing just terrified him. So they go back inside. And he says this is when he gets extremely angry with Saltanat and he begins to blame her for everything. He said that it was her fault, that on that day they got in a fight, that she couldn't control her emotions. She, insinuated this whole fight, and because of her, now they were stuck in the restaurant, naked, looking terrible, and not even being able to order an Uber ride. So he says that as the elevator reached I think the second floor and they're in his restaurant, he tells her, "Is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted this day to be like?" And according to him, these are his words. She turns back and she giggles and says, "Yes, this is exactly what I wanted." And this is when he says that he completely lost his temper. He grabs Saltanat, he slaps her twice in the face, and she falls to the floor. While she's on the floor, he kicks her in the buttocks area like 3 times. After that, he grabs her by the hair and takes her to the bathroom. And this is not the bathroom that's in the VIP area, this is a common area bathroom. There is no light in the bathroom. He then grabs her by the hair again and takes her back to the VIP room number 1. He said that at that time he called another car ride to pick them up, and he instructed Saltanat to pack all the stuff that she had left in the VIP room number 1. He instructed her to find whatever clothes she could find, put it on, and that they were gonna go home. He said that she entered the room and then she walked for a bit and fell a couple of times. Then she sat on a couch inside the VIP room. She laid down and she closes her eyes. And he looked at her thinking that maybe she was like very drunk and she just needed to sleep. And in the morning when she would wake up, mind you, this was already morning, maybe in the afternoon when she would wake up, they would finally go home. This is when the story gets a very dark turn because Kuandyk instructed his cousin to delete all the footages of that night, and his brother did just that. So there were very few footages left from that night, and there's a footage of him slapping her twice and kicking her, and he claims that that was the only time he ever was physical with her. He says that at no point in the VIP room he lifted a finger, they had no fight, everything was just fine. But the truth is that, after he dragged her into the VIP room number 1, she would not come out of there alive. So these are his words, and obviously he is trying to protect himself. And I, for one, do not believe that she just laid there and went to sleep. Anyway, he continues. He says that Saltanat is now on a couch and she is sleeping. He takes off his winter jacket that she was wearing and he like covers her with it. And he goes to sleep himself, cuz he just spent all night beating up his wife. He needs his rest. He wakes up at around 11 or 10 and Saltanat is still asleep. According to him, she was snoring. And again, she was probably agonizing. She was not snoring, but he insists. She was snoring, so he just thought, okay, she needs more time to rest. He calls up his cousin and tells him to bring like 2 duvets. And his cousin does just that. His cousin arrives at the restaurant, brings duvets. He covers up Saltanat and then he tells his cousin to delete all the footages from cameras from that night. Again, his cousin obeys. At some point, he said that he called a fortune teller because Saltanat, she didn't wake up. he was now getting concerned, but not concerned enough to call a fucking ambulance. No, he calls a fortune teller. And he said that the fortune teller told him that his wife was just tired. Her brain was really, really tired. He should just let her sleep. And in the evening, she would wake up and they would go home and everything is going to be a okay. And Kuandyk, of course, listens to his fortune teller. Now it is around afternoon, and he orders his cousin to bring him some food. Yes, as his wife was either dead or dying in the VIP room number one. He just goes out, he eats, he then has a meeting with a woman. He said that it was a work meeting according to him, and he meets her in the VIP room number five as his wife is dying in the VIP room number one. Eventually, he said that at some point he noticed that Saltanat she didn't have a pulse, and he called his cousin. His cousin comes and he checks, and he also can't find the pulse. So then he calls an ambulance. Ambulance arrives, and oh my god, the people, the doctors on that night who came to the restaurant, they said that they'd never seen anybody so badly bruised in their life. Like, she was covered in bruises, she was covered in blood. VIP room number one, it just looked terrible. There was blood everywhere, like broken furniture everywhere. It just looked crazy. They tried to save her life, to resuscitate her, but they fail. And according to Bishimbaev, once he realized that Saltanat was dead, he went to the kitchen of the restaurant, found a knife, and was attempting to kill himself. And this is when his cousin and one of the bartenders tried to stop him. And Bishimbaev was screaming, "Did I kill her? Did I kill her? How am I gonna look my kids in the face? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna tell her parents?" And since it looked like a homicide scene, the ambulance, they call the police, and this is when he gets arrested. So, according to him, he did not kill Saltanat. He says that yes, he slapped her, yes, he kicked her, but he claims that she had like prior injuries or prior health issues that caused her death. And he again insists that she hit her face on a toilet by herself and she just kept falling. And when he looked at her, after he picked her up, her face looked just fine. Nothing was bleeding. It was all good. They found like finger marks on her nail, and it looked like, he was choking her. But he says that no, at no point he choked her. He was just trying to find pulse, and he was, so desperate to find pulse. Maybe he was pressing too hard, and that's how she had all those marks on her neck. Again, I personally do not believe this. This is all just, his side of the story, and I personally think that this is all just a bunch of horseshit, in my opinion. Now, his brother or cousin is also being tried for deleting all the footages from that night, but his brother claims that, he did not know what was going on that night. He said that in the morning he got a message from the manager of the restaurant who told him that Kuandyk and his wife spent all night in the restaurant and they've been drinking, and that he should probably go and check on them. Again, he also gets a call from Kuandyk telling him to bring duvets to the restaurant. Anyway, he said that he saw Saltanat like maybe with one eye, and he realized that she was naked, so therefore he felt kind of shy to enter the VIP room. And he thought that the reason why Kuandyk told him to delete all the footages from the restaurant was that they maybe had sex in the VIP room, maybe they were walking around naked. So he didn't want, he didn't want the staff to find that footage or to send it somewhere or for it to go viral. So, in his understanding, that was the reason. And he didn't question it, he just did as he was told. Now, as his cousin was giving his testimony, he said that they are not even like technically cousins, they're like far relatives, and he comes like from a very, how to say, poor family. His parents, they basically live like in a village, and Kuandyk for him was like this person of authority. He was 10 years older than him. He, was an ex finance minister. He was extremely accomplished. And for the most part, he worked as his assistant. So he was just used to doing what he was told and not questioning his uh, rich relative. And another thing to note is that according to the cousin, let's call him cousin, right? According to the cousin, it wasn't the first time they had a physical altercation. He said that he saw Saltanat with bruises before, and he knew that their relationship was very toxic. And like 10 days before she died, they had another fight in the VIP room. And he said that when he arrived, the VIP room was completely trashed, and he was the one in charge of, calling people to repair stuff. So this was something that was unfortunately very common in their relationship. He was aware that Saltanat, tried to leave him multiple times, but she kept coming back. And other than that, he just like didn't really get involved in their marriage. Again, he said that for him, Kuandyk is somebody who is 10 years older than him. It's not appropriate for him to get involved in his marriage or to advise him. He did confirm that, once he talked with Kuandyk about why they were having so many marital issues with Saltanat, and he says that Kuandyk told him that he found out that Saltanat used to have relationships with a certain person, and this really affected him. It really shocked him, so to say, and he just couldn't let it go. But he said that at no point Kuandyk did actually, give him the name of a person or the context. Again, Saltanat was 30 years old when they got married. Obviously, she had prior relationships. So he said that he did as he was told and nothing else. And if anything, he tried to help her out because at some point he called one of his acquaintances whom he knew was a doctor, and he asked him like, hey, my cousin and his wife, they've been drinking all night and fighting, and now his wife is asleep and she is snoring, she won't wake up, is this normal? To which his acquaintance told him that they should probably call an ambulance. But he said that, his cousin didn't want to call an ambulance, so can you just tell me this is normal or whatnot? And the doctor told him that, if they indeed were drinking all night long and fighting, then perhaps she had like alcohol poisoning. Maybe that's why she was asleep. But he still insisted that, if they didn't want any bad publicity, there was like this private ambulance that they could call, and it's best to, call doctors because he cannot tell from far away what is going on, and obviously he cannot drop everything that he is doing and come and check on her. So, yeah, he says that he, for that reason, tried to call a doctor to verify what was going on, and he said that he took the doctor's word and he thought like, yeah, it actually makes sense, these two have been drinking all night, maybe she was just extremely drunk and snoring. Again, both him and Kuandyk describe her as snoring and not agonizing. So yeah, these are Kuandyk's and his cousin's testimonies. So the trial began on March 27th and it's still ongoing. So we found out, about their relationship from the testimonies of her friends, her brother, some of the staff, and of course Kuandyk's and his brothers. And the staff members who worked on that night, they said that they could hear some fighting, like people were shouting. And when they were asked why they didn't try to intervene, they said, like, first of all, this was not uncommon, that him and his wife could, in the past had fights in the restaurant, and she never died, so they thought like she would be okay this time as well. Second of all, they described Kuandyk as a just a terrible person. He said that whenever Kuandyk would be in the restaurant, they were instructed to stop everything that they were doing and just disappear. They were instructed to never talk to him, never look at him, because he had a terrible temper and he could just lash out on anybody, really. And it was so bad that the manager of the restaurant at some point even talked to the cousin, and she said that, because Kwandak would come to the restaurant so often, he would disrupt things and he wouldn't let them work peacefully. Maybe there was some way they could get rid of him. Could he like go live abroad maybe, or go, hold his meetings elsewhere? Because the restaurant is owned by his mother technically, and he was like a boss there, and he said that he would come there mostly just to hold work meetings, but again, he was probably, annoying everybody who was working there and not letting them do anything. So that doesn't really paint a pretty picture of Kwandak. So, this is it for today's episode. Since this case is so huge, there is just too much to cover and to try to fit in one episode. So, I decided to divide these series into several episodes because again there's a lot to cover. Number one, number two, the trial is still ongoing, so there's going to be a lot of updates about this case still. So in the next episodes we will discuss what medical experts had to say about Sultanat's injuries. We will discuss the marriage from the perspective of Sultanat's friends and family members. Also, what was found in Sultanat's phone and the notes that she wrote about her marriage. So please stay tuned until the next episode, and please take care of yourselves and don't stay in toxic relationships. If you know somebody who is in an unhealthy relationship, please try to reach out to them and help